Book 2, The Echo. It had been weeks since that night in the clearing, though I still hesitate to measure time against it. Days passed, yes, and nights came and went, but I couldn't quite tell if I was moving away from that moment or circling back toward it. At first, I thought it would fade. I wanted it to. Strange things happen to people all the time, don't they? Hallucinations, sleep paralysis, tricks of light. That's what I told myself. That's what I wrote in my journal, page after page of excuses, trying to fold the extraordinary back into something I could file away as ordinary. But it didn't fade. I would be walking through town and catch myself staring too long at someone holding open a door, or a kid sharing part of his lunch. Noticing these things was normal enough, I suppose, but it was the weight of noticing that felt strange. Every small act landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading further than I could measure. At night, my dreams carried echoes of the clearing, not vivid recreations, not cinematic visions, just fragments, a shimmer at the corner of my vision, a faint pulse of silver light, a voice that didn't use words. Sometimes I would wake gasping, not out of fear, but with the disorienting sense that I'd been somewhere else for hours and then dropped back into my own bed. More than once, I found myself standing by the back door in the early hours, boots unlaced, jacket half on, staring out at the ridge. I would resist, tell myself to go back to bed, and sometimes I did, but the pull was always there, quiet and patient. One night, I stopped resisting. The air was cooler than the last time, the smell of rain still hanging after an afternoon storm. The trail was damp, soft underfoot. My flashlight beam felt almost intrusive, so I shut it off halfway up, letting my eyes adjust to the pale glow of moonlight leaking through the canopy. The clearing looked the same, silent, empty, ordinary. I almost laughed at myself, thinking maybe I had finally gone mad chasing shadows and memory. I stood there for a long time, breathing, waiting, listening to the steady thrum of insects around me. And then the air shifted. Not dramatically, no streak of light this time, no sudden spectacle, just a subtle density, as if the clearing was holding its breath again, the same way it had before. My skin prickled before my eyes saw anything. Then the shimmer returned, faint at first, bending the air just enough to catch my attention. I don't know if it was the same one. Part of me wanted it to be. Continuity was easier to bear than the thought of multiples, but there was no way to tell. The form emerged as before, tall, fluid, colors rolling softly across its surface. My chest tightened, my pulse quickened, but I did not step back. The voice came, quiet and certain. You returned. I swallowed, unsure whether to speak aloud or just think back. I didn't know if I should. And yet you did. There was no judgment in it, only observation. The colors rippled faintly, slow and deliberate. I wasn't sure if it was you, I admitted, my voice trembling. It does not matter. I blinked, unsettled by the simplicity of that answer. A dozen questions crowded my throat. Who are you? What do you want? Why me? But they felt meaningless now. The being wasn't here to satisfy curiosity. It was here to continue. The air rippled again, and I felt it, not an image this time, but sensation, thick and undeniable. I was standing in the clearing, yet at the same time I wasn't. My body was rooted in soil and shadow, but my mind stretched further, carried outward into vastness I can't describe. It wasn't space, not as I've seen in textbooks or movies, but an endless depth threaded with light and silence. For a moment, I was certain I would dissolve into it. My hands clenched at my sides, grounding myself in the feel of damp bark and rough earth. You said to remember, I whispered. And you did. The words pressed through me, heavy with meaning. I thought of the days since the first encounter, the countless small acts I had noticed, the weight of fire and kindness and cruelty woven through humanity. Why show me more? I asked. The shimmer pulsed faintly, and for the first time I felt what might have been hesitation. Not human hesitation, not exactly, but a pause filled with unspoken measure. Because seeing changes being. The phrase echoed inside me, simple yet impossible to escape. I wanted to argue, to demand clarity, but my mouth stayed closed. Deep down, I knew it was true. Once you witness something, truly witness, you cannot return to what you were before. The air thickened again, and I was shown more, not visions this time, but echoes, memories that weren't mine, yet clung as if they could be. A hand raised in violence, a hand raised in mercy, a line of fire crossing a dry field, a cup of water passed from one stranger to another. Over and over, destruction and preservation, the same fire, used differently. My legs trembled, My chest burned. I nearly collapsed under the weight of it. I can't, I gasped. It's too much? The being's colors rippled softly, not in anger but in a kind of patience. Not all, only enough. I felt the intensity pull back, like a tide retreating. My lungs filled again, ragged and desperate, but I could breathe. I wanted to ask what the end of all this would be, what it was preparing me for, whether I was the only one or just one of many scattered across the world, chosen to bear witness, but the questions dissolved on my tongue, answers weren't the point. The shimmer pulsed one last time, softer now, almost gentle. Do not run from the weight, carry it, share where you can, that is enough. And then, as before, it folded back into nothing. The clearing was silent, ordinary, the forest reclaiming itself as though nothing had disturbed it. I stood there, shaking, damp with sweat despite the cool night. My knees nearly buckled, but I steadied myself against a tree, forcing breath into my lungs. The walk home felt longer than it should have. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle too deliberate, every star above a reminder that I was impossibly small and yet unbearably heavy with what I carried. Back in my room, I didn't try to sleep. I sat at my desk, hands trembling, and wrote until the sun came up. Words spilled out that I barely recognized as my own, fragments and half-thoughts, broken sentences. None of it captured what had happened, not really, but it was all I had. And still, even as daylight poured across my desk, I knew one thing: this wasn't finished. The first night had been an opening, a test of presence. This second, it was something else, a deepening, a preparation. For what, I don't yet know. But the echo lingers.